radio station.
Make sure whatever you do, you don't touch that.
I didn't touch it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Make sure.
I've been married twice.
Have you?
Both times to women, never boys.
But you know, me, I'm still different.
And it wasn't Fanny, that's for sure.
That's the truth.
He would have been blessed if he had been, right?
God knows that's right.
That's right. Stan, you've been sitting much too long, much too long. Welcome, 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 welcome to Truth, a radio program designed with you in mind, a program whose sole purpose is to empower you, our listeners, for information leads to knowledge, and knowledge is power. And as always, I want to empower you to take control of your life, those things that impact you, your family, and your community. As always, too, we want you to go to the website at www.gwen-truth.com so you can access resource listings that will link you to that information that will make you all powerful. That's links to your municipalities, your county agencies, state agencies, federal agencies, and advocacy groups. I'm Gwen Azama-Edwards, as has been stated, former city commissioner, retired city clerk, city of Daytona Beach, and President CEO of AE Enterprises, Inc., a consulting firm on politics and ethics. Shout out to Bethune-Cookman University. Shout out to Shaq's mama and his uncle and his sister who were there to for the renaming of the Wellness Center. And they added not only her mother's name, but also added health equity to that name, and that was the major change. So shout out for all of those who made that possible. I'm going to just jump right into my guest because I'm so happy and proud. I have, number one, my hubby, Pastor Larry T. Edwards of St. John Missionary Baptist Church Incorporated. He's going to tell you about his anniversary and stuff that's coming up. But also James E. Huger. I used to work with him for at Daytona Beach. He was the community development director when I was the city clerk. He's also a former city commissioner, former county councilman, an icon in himself. And if you guys go to YouTube, what you're going to see is just the two of them, not me just hearing my voice, because it was just so important to me that he be videoed. I mean, he's just awesome, awesome, awesome.
Former Marine officer.
Yes, we're going to talk about that too. I mean, he has just done so many things. He is a great man in his own right. So I'm going to just go ahead and get it started. Let Pastor Edwards start sharing about his anniversary that's coming up, just so we don't miss that, Pastor. And then have James Huger share with you a little bit about his background. And I know we're not going to let the moment pass, Jimmy, without you saying something about your life mate, Fanny, who was also a great woman in her own right, right?
Right.
Yes, she was. Yes, she was. And Jimmy speaks a little light, you know, his voice is not carrying that well, but you guys just pay close attention because he's just a super, super person, and I don't want you to miss anything that he's sharing. Pastor Larry?
Good, Gwen. It's good to be on your show one more time tonight, especially with this great honor to be next to Mr. Huger, the great man-made servant.
Yes.
But we want to take the time.
God-made.
God-made, correct. We want to take the time to invite you, listeners, that I will be celebrating 11 years at St. John as pastor, starting on Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock. We will have a speaker, and on the 17th we will have close out the service. We invite you to come to our services, which will start, as I say, Sunday at 4 o'clock, and then on Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, Wednesday night, 7 o'clock, and then back on the 17th, we'll close it out at 4 p.m. And we will have judges, we will have law enforcement, we will have members of the community, people that I've been a part of since I've been serving as a pastor in the greater Volusia County area. And I don't want to prolong the program, but Ms. Edwards, you asked me also to talk about that experience on the beach, any places that we had, and you want to come back to that or what?
Yes, let's start get into Mr. Huger, James Huger. We could give him a chance to talk. My husband, you know, guys, you know, I have him on the show once or twice a year just so he feels important. But you know. He knows he's here as a guest. He was my #1 guest. But then when I thought about just having James Huger on, and he knows like I know, we love him. We just love him to death. And Mr. Huger, if you could just tell our listeners, you know, people, you've been written about so much, and people talk a lot about, whenever they talk about African Americans, great icons, they talk about great history, they always mention you. You are a living icon. Which, you know, a lot of people can't say that, but you are, and you're a person who not only is a living icon in and of yourself because of your being a former county commissioner and city commissioner and you know, community development director, and you were a state working. Mm-hmm. And as president of the state community development association, I think you, even at the national level, you've just done so much, and so that people can, because they read a lot about that. If you want to share some things about that, and especially about your Fanny, your Miss Fanny, and then share with us about your experience with Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune. You know, there are a lot of people still living who knew her, and your experience, of course, with Dr. Martin Luther King. I mean, you've just touched the hands of so many important people, and I know that, I want you guys to know this too, that he is a man of God as well, who loves God, puts God first. And, you know, if anybody wants to know how do you live long, you know, a long, healthy life, you do that with God's hand, your hand in God's hand, right?
Right. Thank you, Gwen. Always good to be with you. You have your hand in so many things. And I've had the pleasure of knowing you over all these years, and the opportunity to work with you all these years. I consider myself one of the most blessed people in this world. My father, there's an article in the paper not long ago that said there were 3 women who were a part of my legacy. The first was my mother, Azama-Edwards, who married a Methodist preacher, Reverend Thomas Huger. And then there was Mary McLeod Bethune. And then there was that great little lady, Fanny Brinson. I started out as a Methodist minister's son. Daddy moved place to place, all over this state. He was pastoring in West Palm Beach. They had a special program they had on, and they wanted to have somebody unusual to speak. Mrs. Bethune had just started the school up in Bethune Beach. So somebody suggested that they have Mrs. Bethune come down and speak. Wow. He checked in, Mrs. Bethune was available. She could come and she could speak for them. But this was during a very rigid segregation period in which we lived. So they couldn't eat downtown, they couldn't stay downtown. The church had to arrange for them to stay somewhere and to be fed. That Sunday afternoon, the program turned out to be exceptionally well. Mother and some of the ladies of the church made a meal for Mrs. Bethune. My brother and I were coming down the hall, looked in and saw a strange sight. Daddy was not sitting at the head of the table. We weren't sure we saw what we thought we saw, so we doubled back to see it. When Ms. Bethune saw us at the door, she called us in. Sometime prior to that, Mother and Daddy insisted that we do a lot of reading, because they felt that, in spite of segregation, that would be the one thing that would help us. There was a story about a man by the name of Rudolph Valentino, who was a movie actor. and he had just been nominated and elected the best dressed man in Hollywood, California. And all the subsequent articles that had something about him always talked about the pretty women who were already around. Well, I was in 8th grade, I think, about that time. But in spite of that fact, I thought that's the life I wanted to live. I wanted to be the best dressed man around. I wanted to have pretty women around me too. When we went back in, Ms. Bethune wanted to know our name, where we went to school, what grade we were in, and what we wanted to be when we grew up. I answered all the questions except what I wanted to be when I grew up. I turned it over to my brother. She said, no, you did not tell us, young man, what you wanted to be. Well, I was backed in the corner because I didn't know how I was going to tell her that. So I hesitated. She said, well, what do you want to be? And what? So I told her I wanted to be a movie actor. She wanted to know why I wanted to be a movie actor, because black people at that time were not being recognized as movie actors. There was a woman by the name of Butterfly McQueen. I particularly can't remember what show she was in. But she was the only one who got any ink from the press. So Ms. Bethune wanted to know, why did you want to be an actor? Well, I didn't want to tell her, but came up and I said, well, number one, they're the best dressed men around. And number two, they always have pretty women around them. Well, everybody at the table fell out laughing. Ms. Bethune said to my father, when this young man finished his high school, as I said, I was in 8th grade at that time, 9th grade, send him to Bethune-Cookman College where we will straighten him out. Well, the next year, they moved Daddy from Palm Beach to Daytona Beach. Daddy asked me if I wanted to go to Campbell Street School, which was the colored school in Daytona Beach at that time, or if I wanted to go to the college that had 10th, 11th, and 12th grades, but only 2 years of college. Well, I said, I want to go to the college, and I did. 2 years later, they moved Daddy from Daytona to Jacksonville. I moved into Cookman Hall, and I finished high school at Bethune-Cookman, then got involved in the college program. It just happened that during that time, white people came down south for the winter, stayed here, and then as soon as the spring came, they would go back north, which means the hotels flourished. They had a bunch of young black men who were working in these hotels. They had nothing to do in Daytona Beach because everything was segregated. It turned out that Bethune-Cookman, we had our little games and organizations on campus that had all kinds of things. So we invited these guys to come and be a part of it. They did. Subsequent to that time, one of the boys said to me, we have an opening at a hotel and wondered if you knew of anybody who wants that job. They told me what the job was, what it paid. My eyes got big as a dog. Because Daddy wasn't making any money, so I couldn't have any of the clothes that I wanted. I wanted to be a dressed guy. I couldn't get it. I wanted to do it. I couldn't do it. They couldn't do anything because Daddy wasn't in a position to do it. So I said, oh, shoot, I'm going to drop out of school and work at the hotel. So I told them, I said, yeah, I know somebody who wants a job. Yeah. And I told them who it was. They didn't believe me. But I insisted that I wanted it, and they arranged for me to go and have an interview. I did. They offered me the job as an elevator operator. My roommate agreed that he would do my job on campus. I was working in the dining room. And on Sunday afternoon we had community meeting. After community meeting we had what we call a bake sale, where we sold donuts and cookies and pies and cakes and that kind of thing, and made good money for the college. So when it came time for him to go to work, he appeared and told Mrs. Davis, who was in charge, that he was there for Huger. She said, where's Huger? Well, we had agreed that he wasn't going to tell him where I was. So he said, I'm not sure. And that's all she could get out of him. But she carried him to Ms. Bethune. Ms. Bethune was sitting at her desk, and Ernie said when she started talking, that she started staring at him. Everything in him just left. And Ms. Bethune just stared at him, didn't open her mouth, just stared. And when Miss Davis got through, she looked at him, she started saying, "Hugh, Ernest, where is Hugh?" Ernest said, everything left him. He said, he's over at the Coquina Hotel on the beach working. Okay, well, I worked that afternoon. We stayed over there because of segregation. They provided quarters for us to stay there. I had finished my afternoon shift, had supper, changed clothes, put on the bottom of my pajamas in bed. Somebody knocked on the door, and I was in there reading. I said, "Come on in, baby, the door's open." And in walked this lady called Mary McLeod Bethune. You know, she walked with a cane.
Mm-hmm.
She strutted in there, and I was in that bed, and I almost fell out of bed. So the last person I expected to see in that room. "Hugh, what are you doing here?" And then he started. But what happened was, the boy who brought her down to my room went down the hall and told everybody, "Miss Bethune is in Hugh's room." Everybody who was free come busting down in the room. In 5 minutes, there was 6 or 7 guys standing around the room. Miss Bethune talked, "Hugh, why are you here? Why did it?" And she said, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" I said, "Well, Miss Bethune, you have too many problems." I said, "I could handle it." I said, "I'm grown now. And what did I say that for?" She jumped into my face. She said, "Hugh, don't you ever tell me you're grown until you got a job, you're making money, you can support yourself. You understand that?" Yes, ma'am. But by this time, my supervisor walked in. She said, "Get your things ready. You're going back to school." I said, "No, ma'am, I can't, because he doesn't have anybody to take my place in the morning. I was supposed to go to work at 7 o'clock the next morning." And I said, and I introduced her to him. Well, that guy reached in, when she shook his hand, he bowed. He bowed so low that I wasn't sure that he was going to ever straighten up. But he did. And he said, "That's true, Miss Bethune. I don't have anybody to take his place at 7 o'clock. But Miss Bethune, as soon as he gets through at that 12 o'clock shift, I'm going to see that he gets back to the..." She said, "That's not good enough." She gave him a telephone number, and the guy with him, Claude Keys, called him. He was sitting there waiting for him. He said he'd be there. So he came back in and he said, but while he was gone, Miss Bethune made a statement that lasted throughout our lifetime. She said, "Houston, the situation we find ourselves in today will not last always. Opportunities are going to present themselves. But you know what? You're not going to be in a position to take advantage of those opportunities because you will not have an education. And you possibly work in somebody's hotel. I'm going to see that that does not happen. And you get your clothes on, let's get out of here." Well, I had to leave. It was an embarrassing situation, but it was one of the most memorable moves that I ever made as far as my life was concerned. I went on back to school, finished 2 years of college. My sophomore year, I was a very active youngster on campus. We had high school groups that would come to campus all the time and bring their class, 12th grade class, see how it was to be on a college campus. St. Petersburg had Gibbs High School. They brought that other 12th grade class over there. It was one of the cutest little girls we'd seen in a long time in that class. And everybody was looking at her, "Oh, boy, she had long hair and all that. She had all that." So it turned out we broke the class down in the group. She ended up in my little group. Her name was Fanny Burnson. When she started talking, I found out she had a real good mind. And I got to the point where I was impressed with her, but she was talking too much. And I told her, I said, "Young lady, why don't you shut up and let somebody else talk?"
Oh, God.
So she did. she stopped. But the little boy started to ask a question, and when he was asking that question, he got confused. He couldn't complete it, and she answered the question, asked the question for him. When she finished, he said, "Thank you, Fanny." I was going to say that, but I don't know what happened. Well, I said to her sponsor, when this young lady finishes high school, be sure that she comes to Bethune-Cookman. Because with the kind of mind she has, if she gets under Mrs. Bethune, there's no telling where in the world she's going to end up. She said she would. Well, it just happened that I ended up in West Virginia. When I got there, I found there were a bunch of kids from Florida. So I said, let's have a Florida club. Within a matter of 3 or 4 days after we got on campus, they agreed to have called everybody together and had a Florida club. Because I was running my mouth telling them about why they needed a Florida club, they knew they didn't have any experience and all that kind of thing, and we could be there to help. Because I was 10th grade, 11th grade then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no, my first, I was a junior at that time, because I had finished 2 years at Bethune-Cookman.
Uh-huh.
So I was a junior. So I thought I was grown. And all these youngsters, they were helping. All right, it turned out they nominated a girl by the name of George Butterfield. He had married George Ingram. Then they nominated Fanny Brimson. But I was writing, but I heard the name Brimson. For some reason struck a chord. I heard that name somewhere before. But when I looked, she had gotten up and started up to the front of the room. And, oh my God, that's that little girl that I was trying to get to go to Bethune-Cookman. Well, it just happened. She didn't go to Bethune-Cookman. She went to West Virginia, and for the 4 years she was there, she was Jimmy Hughes' girlfriend. Because I just had 2 years of college left with her.
Uh-huh.
But then we stayed in touch all the rest of the year. To the point where we got to be known as I was Miss Brimson's little brown-skinned, bald-headed baby girl. And we, excuse me, stayed together those 4 years that she was at the state. Miss Bethune, when I graduated, got me a job in the water department. Then about a month, 2 months after I was working in the water department, she sent for me and told me that she wanted me to go to Bethune-Cookman to help run the college.
Mm.
And I was just fresh out of college. I told her, I said, Miss Bethune, I don't know about running. She said, but you will learn. I went ahead and that started my experience at Bethune-Cookman.
Mm-hmm.
I went in, we got, Fanny graduated from West Virginia in August. And no, in June. In August we got married. In December, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I went in the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it just happened. I didn't want to go in the Navy because I didn't like all them buttons on the pants. And I didn't want to go in the Army because everybody was going in the Army. Well, the Coast Guard and all that. Anyhow, newspaper, we had the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender. The Pittsburgh Courier came up with a headline, United States Marine Corps to accept Negroes. That's me. So I went over to Orlando and volunteered for the Marines. When we got through with the interview, the guy said to me, he said, you are the kind of man we're looking for the Marines. So I'm blowing up there. But we can't accept you. What kind of double talk is that? You know? I said, why? He said, you have a physical defect. I said, a physical defect? Because I've just been called by the Army to have my physical exam. Had been examined and told 2 weeks later I was going to Camp Landing. So I said, what kind of physically, do you have flat feet? Oh, I said, well, there's nothing I can do about that. No, you go and get some lunch. What we're gonna do, we're gonna contact Atlanta and see if we can get a waiver, okay? Come back in 10 days, and I said, I can't come back in 10 days, why? Because I'll be in the army in 10 days. Well, go get lunch and come back anyhow. I came back and they had to arrange some kind of way to overlook flat feet. And when they told me that they'd accept me, I said, but I still have flat feet. He said, yeah, but flat feet is the characteristic of Negroes. And since you're a Negro, we can accept you. I said, well, that's good enough for me. Well, I had quite an experience in the Marine. And
Your family probably checking on you.
yeah, it worked out that when I got through with the Marine, I was in there 5 years, and ended up, there were never going to be officers at that time. None of us were officers. But I made, 3 of us made Sergeant Major, and I was the second one to make Sergeant Major in the Marine Corps.
And I'm told you did it in record time, right?
Yeah, well, it was about 3 years, 3.5 years. Because when we went to Washington for a weekend, got off the plane. Got off we got off the train, the MP walked up to me and said, Marine, you under arrest. Under what? Under arrest. Well, the guys who were with me want to start fighting right quick. So, I said, what's the charge? Don't say anything. Carried me down to OD. When he got in OD's office, he said, I just arrested this man. He said, what's the charge? Impersonating this guy against CO. So I flipped. So the man looked at me and said, you checked his ID and his travel papers, didn't you? So he said, no, sir. When I saw he was black and had 6 stripes on his arm, I knew that was wrong. Well, I had the opportunity to talk to that white young man. And I told him, I can't say anything to you, sir, but I can talk to this PFC. And I use all my Marine Corps language, my rank, and everything else, and I cussed him out. So the man said, well, we made a mistake. I said, sir, I'm going to make damn sure that you don't make this mistake again. So of course, the mistake was made again when I went overseas. They didn't expect to see this black Sergeant Major. And when I walked in there, the guy said, you Sergeant Major Hughes? I said, do you have my papers in front of you? Why would I be bringing somebody else? Why would I be bringing somebody else's papers in here? So they finally found that they couldn't send me where they were supposed to send me out of the Pacific because I was black. And I told the biggest lie I ever told in my life. The man said, we're going to have to change your station because we're sending you out where they are fighting day and night, killing people. And we feel certain that some of those guys out there, when you walk in there, Sergeant Major, don't kill you.
Oh, jeez.
So I said, sir, when I volunteered for the Marines, I knew that there was a possibility I'd be killed, but I'd be serving my country, so I had no problem with that. And now if you're telling me that some of my Marine people were going to kill me because of my rank, I said, I don't have no problem with that either, because that's fate. So send me wherever you're supposed to send. But they changed it. They sent me someplace else. All right, I finished my tour of duty with the Marines.
And we will mention here that you got your congressional medal.
That was a big deal.
That was later on, yes, I know, more recently, but we want people to know that you did get that, yes.
Fanny had graduated from AU with a master's in psychiatric social work. She's doing real well in St. Petersburg, so I decided to go to St. Petersburg to work rather than come back to Bethune-Cookman. Well, I talked to Ms. Bethune and she said, Future, is that what you really want to do? And I said, yes, ma'am. She said, go ahead and do it. And I did. Well, I couldn't find a job because I was black.
Mm.
Yeah. And I bought a filling station. But after I got some grease under my fingernails, I figured that I was supposed to be in the filling station. Telephone rang. Fanny said, Houston, Ms. Bethune wanted to speak to you. She said, Houston, come over here tomorrow. I need to talk to you. I came over here. She said she had been assistant to President Roosevelt. She was on through with that. She's back as president of the college. She said, I've been assigned to the run of the United Negro College Fund campaign in Washington, D.C. Houston, I'm not going to Washington, back to Washington to run the campaign. You going up there to run the So after I got over my fright, I ended up, I got home, I told Fanny. Fanny said, you don't seem to be very enthusiastic about it. I said, I'm not. I had no experience in no campaign. In Washington, D.C., stationed at Howard University, with the president of Howard University as my co-worker. I know that, and I'm just out of college. You know, that doesn't make sense. Fanny said, Houston, you realize Ms. Bethune could have called anybody
That's
in the
right.
country that she wanted to do it. If she had no confidence in you, said, Houston go do it. And she said, well, I did it. I went to Washington, and we had a meeting out in Texas. She called me, she said, Houston, when are you going to Texas? And I told her, come by here the day before. Yes, ma'am. Well, I found out a long time ago you didn't ask her why.
Mm.
When she told you something, you just said, yes, ma'am, and did it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find out why. All right. When I walked in that office, there was this tall, bald-headed man, very distinguished. She introduced me to him as Dr. Richard Vernon Moore, the new president of Bethune-Cookman College. He'd just been appointed.
Mm.
And I want you to meet him before you go out to meet these other presidents, because I know the first thing they're going to ask you is about the new president of Bethune-Cookman, and you have the opportunity to say you knew him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's for 47 years, I stayed there with Richard Moore. Anyway, I'm in and out with Richard Moore. It turned out that he was brought there to get rid of 3 years of high school, and they had 2 years of college.
Mm.
And when all of those changes were made, I was his administrative assistant.
Mm-hmm.
I worked, I made the change of high schools at
Oh.
Bethune-Cookman,
Uh-huh.
had 4 years of college. And when Dr. Moore left 47 years later, Bethune-Cookman College was had the highest accreditation it could have a southern
Ah, awesome.
And I was with him most of that time.
Another great man, yes.
They decided, he and Ms. Bethune decided I should go to graduate school. I couldn't go to the University of Florida because of my color.
Mm.
But they knew a guy in Washington whose name was Belford Lawson, who happened to have been the president of Alpha fraternity. I was a member of Alpha, and so was Dr. Moore. He knew him. So they called him and told him that they wouldn't accept me in Florida, but he was a graduate of the University of Michigan. Could he get me in Michigan? So he got me admitted to the University of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I got to the University of Michigan.
Mm.
He came to me and said, I want you to go out to California for a convention and head the one of our commissions, the Commission on Futures, well, I forgot what it was. Anyhow, I went. All right, I was in the process of working, and he came to me and he said, Houston, would you like to be General Secretary of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity? I said, what? I said, man, all the alpha men in this world, I could be the General Secretary? How lucky could you be? I said, but I couldn't accept it. Why? Because I told Ms. Bethune and Dr. Moore that when I got through with Michigan, I'd come back to Bethune-Cookman. So he said, well, I can understand that. But what I didn't know was, he went to a meeting and called Moore. Moore government Bethune. They decided, no, that you to stay, if they're elected, stay there. Because he can come back to Bethune-Cookman and bring a lot more experience than he could in there. And so it turned out. For 4 years I was with the General Secretary. All right. The first thing we did, we had to buy headquarters and to set up 50th anniversary. 50th anniversary was working really well, except that we didn't have, couldn't agree on somebody to speak on a Sunday afternoon. Martin Luther King was just getting started. And somebody said, that young man King is something else. Get him. He'll set that audience on fire. So it fell my lot as General Secretary to work with King to get him to speak. He did. And then he finally moved, to Birmingham. And that's when Rosa Parks had her problem. And my president called me, he said, Huger, we are very fortunate. Everybody's been arrested but Martin. It just happened about a month later, Martin was arrested. He called me and said, Huger, Martin, they just arrested Martin. I want you to do something that will prove to the world that Alpha Phi Alpha is behind Martin Luther King and anything he would do. All right. I didn't have that kind of brain. But I had access to the kind of brain that could bring up something like that. They decided, I got some guys, they decided some of us would go down to trial with Martin. And we did. They had his trial, while they were trying. Not one time did they say Reverend King or Dr. King. We knew they weren't going to say Mr. King. We got insulted because they disrespected him. We were going to leave. Martin was sitting right up above us. And he realized we were about to get up, because one of them said, that boy. When he said that boy, that was it. Martin shook his head and said, brother, you know, like he said, be cool. This too shall pass. And here was a man being on trial for his life. We were about to do the same thing that he was there for. He telling us to be cool. He took the winner. But we went downstairs and presented him a check, I think about $5,000. But at that time, that could have been $50,000. That started my relationship with Martin Luther King. As you know, when we started down here in Daytona and St. Augustine, they wanted to have a change. In Daytona, you couldn't swim in it. Black people couldn't swim in the ocean. Couldn't use Peabody, couldn't be found on the other side of the river after 9 o'clock unless you could show you working over there. Martin came down and helped to change all of that. But then Martin Luther King didn't do that by himself. Richard Moore had Sack Lloyd, John Hall, and what's the minister's name in Central Baptist? Hal Marshall.
Hal Marshall.
They really stayed with me. Because they were with him when I went in as a city commissioner. So, my life moved on. Mrs. Bethune always felt that Bethune-Cookman should be a part of the community.
Yes.
But at that time, not a single one of us, people of color, had any kind of relationship with the city. But it ended up, Richard Moore was elected to one of the organizations in town. He was the first black one to do that. Then he got me appointed to the Urban Renewal Advisory Board. From the Urban Renewal Advisory Board, I went in as city commissioner, later county councilman and all that kind of stuff. But all of the stuff that I've been able to do, all of the stuff that Richard Moore was able to do, started with Mrs. Bethune. She really, well, Fanny, bless her heart, was the one who was really the mover. because in each of these instances, when I hesitated,
Mhm.
she bugged me
Give the
like crazy to
encouragement.
do it, you know.
Uh-huh.
But it worked out. And she turned out to be one of the finest people in this town as far as what she could do to help others.
Mhm.
They appointed me the commission on the future of the South. Each Southern governor appointed 2 people. I was one of the 2. Met in Atlanta. Every weekend we would meet up there, I'd always check Martin's church. And he was going to be there that Sunday, I'd stay. He was going to be at church that Sunday. I stayed. When he got through with one of his powerful sermons, and he was very dramatic, you know, those of you who knew it.
Mhm.
Started to see, he stopped and said to the lady, have the choir join me, she was singing my favorite song. And they did. And they sang a song that moved me like crazy. It was beautiful. When I got home that evening, I was telling Fanny about everything that happened. Well, not everything that happened, most of the things that happened. And I said, but when they were singing this song, they sang one stanza that really got me. Said, if I can help somebody, and I pass along. If I can cheer somebody with a word or a song. If I can show somebody who's traveling wrong, then my living shall not have been in vain. Fanny and I sat there for a minute. Fanny said, Hughley, that's beautiful. Why don't we pattern our lives after that and see if we can't do the very same thing? And for 67 years, that's what we tried to do.
Wow.
Tried to do what we could to help our fellows.
Mhm.
And when she passed, not only did we realize what she had done for her family, but what she had done to help make this world a better place.
Mhm.
All mankind to live in peace and brotherhood. So I had those beautiful years of that child. But those 4 years in West Virginia, we were together 71 years. And that's a lifetime.
Wow.
We had 3 boys. They married 3 beautiful girls. We have 7 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren. And the other day, I celebrated my 98th birthday.
98.
Amen.
You're gonna make it to 100 too. My mom used to say 99 and a half won't do. We know we've heard that.
We've had a beautiful, beautiful life.
Oh yes, yes. I know you could really coin that phrase. It's a wonderful life. It has been, hasn't it? Yes, yes. You have just been so totally blessed. Pastor Larry, I'm sure when you were talking, you thought about Rosa Parks because you met her when she came to Bethune-Cookman. In fact, people need to know that Bethune-Cookman University has had some great and outstanding people, African Americans and others who've come to the campus, but you were there when Rosa Parks came in, and you asked her the question about why she didn't get up, right?
Yeah, I was in her last visit. I think she was in her late 80s when she was in Daytona Beach, and I was in charge of the security detail that was escorting her. And while we were riding in the car, I said, Miss Parks, I just got to ask you this question. I says, why did you sit down and not go to the back of the bus? Was it that you were just tired? She told me, she said, a lot of people don't know this. She said, my feet had given up on me. And she said, I was just tired and I was not moving. But she said, I couldn't move if I wanted to. And it just made me so, and I have a picture of that when she was here in Daytona. And the stories that she told, and I appreciate Mr. Hughley because I remember, Mr. Hughley, you led the students to march at the police department when they had only one black police officer. His name was Robert Mays. And I remember Buddy Young, Commissioner Rufus Buddy Young. A lot of people don't know, they were not full-fledged police officers, they were reserve officers. But they were used to police the black community. And they had one car that they could drive because they couldn't drive the white officer's car. They could not even go into briefing rooms with the white officers. And Mr. Hughes spoke about the beach. We used to have to go to Bethune Beach. We couldn't go through the white beach. And when they did integrate the beach, I remember I got it. I went to the beach and I was proud that going across that wooden bridge because we had those drawbridges and they thought that and we come a long way, but we haven't overcome yet. I remember Beach Street, some of the stores that my dad and Dr. Moore and them shopped in down on Beach Street.
Yeah.
But they had
C.K. Slaughters and
Dobies.
yeah, Dobies. Yeah.
Dobies had a water
Women's
fountain
shops.
for coloreds and for whites. And I asked my dad why we can't drink out the white water fountain. I told my brothers, I'm gonna see what the white people water tastes like. And I got up and drank out of that water fountain, and I said, it tastes just like the colored water. And it was just a thrill to see. And the black people respected their black leaders back then. Dr. Richard V. Moore was awesome.
Oh, he was. Yes.
And
He was a mentor of mine.
I grew up with David Moore, his son, and it was just like when we look at this community is blessed to have Mr. Hughes have served in this community, and the stories that he can tell. And at 98 years old, he remembers stuff better than I do.
Yeah.
But that's a blessing. And coming here to the station, we were talking, and he said he's been blessed. And
I have to say very quickly, you listen to Big John 1380 AM on your radio dial in Ormond Beach, Florida, WLE 1380. And we're, of course, talking with Pastor Larry T. Edwards and, of course, the great and awesome James E. Huger. And we're just having a great time talking about these great icons that we've had over the past, African-American icons. And, of course, Jimmy Huger is one major one. And as he's mentioned, Richard V. Moore, who was awesome, but Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune and Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. And all of these people were people that Jimmy Huger knew. And a few persons that, Pastor Edwards has had an opportunity to meet as well, because even Jesse Jackson,
Jesse Jackson, Johnny Cochran,
Rosa
Rosa Parks, that was just a blessing to be with those people, to hear them speak and tell their story.
Right.
And then you could share that story with someone else because you got it from the horse's mouth. And that was a blessing.
And it's like you shared, Dr. Huger, what major lessons you learned when you heard Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune speaking and the importance that she placed on education. God as well, and education. And how important that was in not only mapping out your life, but also setting the tone for how your life would be, the success that it would be.
Then I have an extension of that with my three boys. They run the same path that I did. They're all educated, all doing very well. None of them been in jail. None of them been involved in drugs. And now I have their own families. Their families are coming up. My grandchildren are now beginning to be. And I was thinking about one of my grandson yesterday when he was talking about playing football. He's playing football. Now he's playing basketball. I just say every night and thank God, thank God. How blessed I have been. And those girls that they married, all of them.
Who are not, I remember your wife saying this all the time, and I know it's true, that they're not daughter-in-laws, they're daughters. They're daughters to you guys, yes.
She never looked at any of them as a daughter. She always wanted to have a girl. And I asked her why, because I wanted to look like you. That'd be the ugliest girl you ever. But she married, but she got three beautiful girls. And they have brought in those beautiful children.
Yes, and all of them giving back to the community. Because we got that with our sons too, yeah.
Exactly right.
I don't remember Mr. Huger. We remember we talked about, you were part of this, when the police used to sick the dogs on the blacks from marching.
Yeah.
But we came up with the idea of the Martin Luther King planning bank. We said, why can't we turn this around? We let the police lead the parade, the march. Remember Mr. Huger? Mr. Huger rode with me.